Welcome to Vermont Artists and Authors, where we interview great storytellers and artists from the amazing Green Mountain State. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're honored to have with us the internationally celebrated and acclaimed New England author, Polly Merritt Ingraham. How are you doing?
Hey, Barney. Hi, Barney. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah. So what was exciting before we actually started recording? You live around the outskirts of Concord, New Hampshire, or so, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and your husband's is a bishop?
He is a bishop. It's a position that he was elected to in 2012. It's quite an honor.
Okay,
Yes.
right. And so your book itself actually kind of talks a little bit about that. And this is your debut book. It's called Unconverted: Memoir of a Marriage.
Mm.
What kind of inspired you to write the book?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. I these days, now that the book is just out, I've been thinking quite a bit about when people ask, the main question, so how long have you been working on this? My first answer is about a decade. But then the real truth is, Barney, it was earlier than that. And I'll answer the question the best way I can. We've been married almost, let's see, 30, soon will be 35 years, so quite a while. And my husband has always been, he was just starting his journey as a clergyman when we got married. He sort of was marrying me and the church at about the same time. Um, but it was late, a little later on, especially when I was Sunday after Sunday sitting in the church pew, particularly where we used to live in Amherst, beautiful church, and I had my wonderful children nearby, and I couldn't get a question out of my mind really, which was how did I get here? And I'm hoping that some of your listeners will be familiar with that question in different moments in their life when they think,
Hmm.
how did this happen? Um, what were the things that happened in my life that led me here? Because in my case, which is what prompted me to write the book, the whole first part of my life was really absent any church.
Hmm.
And I so to marry somebody who was just starting out with his journey as a faith leader, that had an enormous impact on my life, and
Hmm.
also on his life.
Yeah. So basically, as you said, this book is your own memoir. How did the conversation go with your husband saying, "I want to write a book about our marriage"? How did that conversation go?
Well, the fact of the matter is, I can't begin to know how people communicate in their marriages, but I didn't ever make such an announcement like that. I just started writing. Um, Back when the kids we were so busy with our three kids with so many activities and music lessons and sports and back and forth to church and our jobs. I was teaching for part of the time, but there was something about this situation that I was in. I shouldn't call it my particular perceptions of my what was happening in my life that prompted me. I've been a writer before that. I've written a number of essays, short essays. But I started something called a Clergy Wife Journal. It was a big blue notebook. Of course, I still have it, a big loose leaf notebook. And I just started jotting things down, things that were crossing my mind, impressions, observations, particularly what I was feeling inside about our life, our way of life. And it was pretty private. Um, so it was. I started, and then I started. I wrote a couple of short essays. Then I started thinking I could write chapters. Um, so somewhere along the way, I guess, in our very busy way of life, I must have said, I think I could make this a book. Uh, and my husband, being as wonderful as he is, he would never said, "Oh no, don't do that." He
Hmm.
said, "Really? Oh," and then just let me go on. And it was, of course, as you understand, when I began to really work on it, and I spent a year in a class 5 years ago. I made a really concerted effort, and I enrolled in a class in Boston called Grub Street. It's at the Grub Street Writing Center, and I made a real commitment to writing this book. And then he knew I was serious, um, but it was really only, and he read. I asked him to read parts as I was moving along. Sometimes I would ask him to read very early on, actually. So he knew that it was moving along. And then when it came to when I had a real first draft, then of course I needed him to pay a little more attention and see whether this was even going to be okay. Obviously, because he and I are the two main characters of the book.
You putting together this memoir, you kind of had to balance obviously some autobiographical aspects to it. How
Hmm.
did you balance in some of that stuff by also kind of adding in a bit of the sensitivity of the topics about your personal life?
I think people who know my writing would one word that might be used to describe it is reflective. I
Hmm.
tend to I tend to describe things that are actually happening, but describe often how they feel as they're happening. So, I describe some key things that happened to me as a child, and that I realize were important now that I become an adult and I'm sort of groping for what is my spiritual life, where do I belong in terms of the religious spectrum. And then I go back to when I'm maybe 8 years old and sitting in a tree, and remembering that very vividly, how important that was for me to find a tree to climb up high in a pine
Hmm.
tree, not having anybody know where I was, and have that time by myself. And I can't describe it, the fact of it, without also trying to describe what it felt like.
So, Polly, what did you learn about yourself writing
Mm,
this?
great question. I think I think I think one of the main things I try to convey in the book, uh, it's a it's an account, chronologically speaking. Really, it's the years of our marriage, the years of starting with our courtship, and then through our marriage, which also includes a few very impactful moves. And people who are in the church probably are familiar with. I mean, other people move also. People move for all kinds of reasons, but when you're in the life of the church, often it's a kind of a given that you're going to move from one church to another. And so I think the thing I'd like to say about my learning was that when you marry, in my case, when I married this man who had a very definite kind of scaffolding of what he believed, it was very clear. It's not that he never has doubts, but he was able to calmly describe for me, to convey to me what his belief system was, and I found that amazing.
Hmm.
I found it amazing, and I found it like it immediately made me ask. So what do I have? What is I don't have what he's just describing exactly, and I don't think I can just take it on, because that's something that he's created through his whole first 3 decades of his life. So what do I have? So the book, in a way, is a partly, at least, it's a quest for me to try to more clearly identify, what do I believe,
Hmm.
and in what ways does it align with what my husband believes, and in what ways maybe is it different.
Hmm.
And the fact of the matter is, I haven't arrived at a complete solution, but I'm the fact, ever since I married him, it's been in a very important part of my life.
Hmm. Would you also kind of consider this book almost like a love letter to your husband too?
Yes, I'm glad you suggested that, Barney, because some people. especially, if they see the title, which is maybe a little startling to people who are regular churchgoers and have had a solid faith life all their life. They may think, oh, you know, um, she's standing apart somehow, or what is she doing? But I'll tell you the truth. The other thing I'm really hoping for this book is that it will be one couple's description of how you can have a really rich marriage when you understand how you're similar and also how you're different. And I can tell you, without, I don't want to exaggerate, but every couple has challenges. You can't be married or live somebody for a long time without having challenges. And often that's in communication and sometimes real roadblocks. But I think as the years have gone by, I think the fact the getting to know somebody else, really getting to know somebody else, is so fascinating. And I think that's what's happening with both of us. And I trust it happens with a lot of other couples too. There are always new things to discover about somebody. Even when somebody you've lived with for a long time might tell you something that happened when he was 11 years old. And and then I might say, "You've never told me that," and he'll shrug and say, "Well, there was never a reason to tell you." So, and again, I don't mean to gloss over that sometimes differences can be challenging. You have to navigate them. You have to navigate, like in the book, people will see when they read the book. In the middle section of this book, I'm focusing on the issue of kids' sports. And I'll just say that I grew up with a bunch of older brothers, and there was no question that we were in favor of sports. We were in favor of sports all the time. And so when it came to married life and raising children with a father who was a clergyman, a priest, there began to be some challenges because, as many of your listeners know, kids sports, I listened to one of your previous podcasts, you had a writer talking about this very issue, and he's working on it. And I think many of us of a certain age have encountered this as we raised our kids, that kids sports have had a way of expanding and demanding more time and more money and more focus. And there I was, a person who was raised believing in sports in some way, thinking that, they're always good. And then here I am, married to somebody who has this devotion to a church and wants his children also to be part of that church. And I understood that. And so we had some things to figure out. Because as I'm sure many people know, there's a lot of hockey on Sunday morning. And so forth, and soccer, sometimes 8 o'clock, an hour away.
Right.
So what do you do if you want your kids, to be part of something like that that's wholesome in general, and yet it conflicts with something else that you feel is very important?
Now, was there a particular part of the memoir that you were excited for readers to discover about?
Partly this part that I've just described, Barney. I worked very hard on this. This is the whole middle section. And at first, what was interesting to me as a writer, and I read a lot of memoirs also, and you see that you can do all kinds of things with structure. So at first I had a kind of a whole section about a typical morning at church with every part of it. And then I had another big hunk which was about, soccer, hockey, tennis, you name it. We did it. And then I kind of had a light bulb moment, I think, where I said, this could be a little more interesting if I do a kind of intersperse one with the other. Because the fact is, that's how my life was.
Right. Was there any part in the story that you're writing the memoir that you're like that you had a debate with yourself because you were thinking,
Yeah.
this is a pretty sensitive
Yes.
topic in my
Yes.
marriage, but I know it's a good story. So did you
Yes.
were there any parts of that you had a
Yes.
debate with yourself?
Yes. I'd say in the second half of the book, there's one important, one of the more important chapters is my description of when my husband the word is consecration when you become a bishop. Some people of our friends and family who didn't quite get it, they would say, when is Rob's coronation? And it was a kind of when is the celebration? What is it called again? Consecration. And that to me is amusing just because people will see when they read my book. In the very early stages of our marriage, I'm doing so much learning of vocabulary,
Mm.
liturgy, deacon, collect. All of these words were new to me. But anyway, I uh, I I devote a chapter to describing what that ceremony was like for me. And again,
Mm.
when you asked, that there could have been a newspaper account of that ceremony. It was wonderful. That it was celebratory. People came from all around. Bishops flew on planes to come here to support. It was amazing. And yet, I don't mean to say a but exactly. However, what I was interested in describing is what it feels like to the spouse.
Mm.
Because I'm guessing that there are other people out there who have gone through something with a spouse who's a kind of a public figure. And you're proud, and you have so many different emotions. One of the emotions that's normal, though, I think, for a spouse is, how is this going to affect our life together? Will we still have the same relationship we've had? And what is this going to mean?
Mm.
So I think in the chapter, your question about what I was a little nervous about it, I shared this chapter with my classmates in Boston, and they were definitely encouraging me. They said, this rings really true.
Mm.
And that's because I didn't hold back in what I was feeling. I was feeling some fear, actually, along with the pride of, great pride.
Right. Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. Was there any point in the story that you felt that didn't make the cut because it was too personal?
Yeah, I can't recall really, Barney, because I think I didn't head in those waters.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I do have one small chapter when we're talking to each other in the bedroom. It's called Braiding Beliefs in the Bedroom. And it's in the morning, and it's one of those wonderful mornings where we don't have to hurry off. And we have a really rich conversation about sort of philosophy. And that's an important one to include, because that to me is one of the great things about marriage. When you can really talk with your partner about something that's important and something you're wondering about, and listen to what your partner thinks.
Mm. No, so I mean, and the book too, Polly, it's a thick book. I mean, you're talking about, over 250 pages. So it's a good read. What did you learn about yourself as an author from writing this?
Well, one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and I very much want to mention to your listeners, is that maybe like some other writers, I started with a blog years ago. And the blog was called A Panorama of a Pastor's Wife. And I started that blog in 2011.
Wow.
That's a long time ago.
Mhm.
And I started it to try to see, kind of get a sense of what my voice was and what my topics of interest were. And I didn't write about our marriage every time. But I tried to develop a little sense of something next to something else that was maybe one thing that was a little different from something else next to it, and what happens there. So I I wrote an awful lot. I would try to write in the early days. I'd try to write an essay every week of maybe, I don't know, 800 words or something. And then in more recent years, it got more challenging. When I was working on the book, I had to try to tend the blog like it was a wood stove, and it was not the same as writing a book. They're much shorter, and it was challenging. Um, but I learned in writing the book, which was your question. Um, I learned an awful lot about the various ways you can structure a whole book. I'm going to shout out to one of my teachers here in New Hampshire. Her name is Mary Carol Moore, and I went to a week with her out in an island in Lake Superior back in 2014. This is how long I've been working on the book. And that workshop was all about structure of a book. And that's something writers really need help with. When you're going to take either a novel or a full-length memoir, you better have some sense of, like building a house. How is this thing going to move in a way that works for readers?
Mm.
And then you can draw diagrams. I used a kind of a W diagram, but then you can use sticky notes. And I think I learned, and then you have to, of course, have people read it and give you feedback.
Now, what did you do? So obviously, your marriage is still ongoing, but the book's
Thank goodness.
finished.
Thank
So
goodness.
what? um, so as the author of the book, what
Mhm.
was the chronological moment that you said, okay, this is where the book ends?
Yeah.
And my second part, the part two to this question is it a cliffhanger, or is there going to be a part
Oh,
two because there's still
oh,
more
oh.
marriage?
No, no, I think maybe it should be more of a cliffhanger. Um, but I think the book ends is with a particular way in which my husband and I have a really healthy togetherness,
Hmm.
and it has nothing to do with the church.
Hmm.
So in other words, um, early when you people who read the book, you see in the beginning, um, I'm wondering, how is this going to work out?
Right.
And so by the time you get to the end, I think you see the way that it can work out.
Right.
And then the other thing I want to say is I also work in a high school. I work in a public high school. That's my actual job. And I have I work with teenagers, and I'm so lucky to work with teenagers. And I'm particularly interested. I've gotten more and more interested in um, what happens with teenagers when they get to a point where they need to become independent, young people, and um, the range of things that affect them, and the range of supports that they have or don't have. So I think that's the direction I'll go in next.
Hmm.
Not about our marriage.
Well, in a way, the book, seems to end, and they lived happily ever after in a way.
Right. But I say one more thing about what I just said. I think this is important. My husband has a very demanding job. He has many hard meetings. He's dealing with a lot of people across the state, most of whom I don't know. And one of the things I think we've learned about marriage, and I think this is other people probably experience this too, is often when he comes home, he doesn't want to relive any part. I'll ask him, "How was your day?" And he'll often say, it's over. But he'll say, tell me, what was your day like at school?" And I can sense often when I tell him just a little story about a kid that I talked to or something that went right, it's refreshing to him because it's not about his work. It's about my work. And it's something he maybe didn't have a chance to think about that day. And that's how sometimes marriage can push, you can nurture another person by providing them with new things to think about.
Remind people where they can pick this book up. They're interested in reading it.
You can order it, I think, pretty much any local bookstore. You can order it from your bookstore. You can order it from Amazon. You can order it from, not gonna list all of the links, but if you go to my website, which is pollyingraham.com, you'll see, all the links there to order. You can also order, you can order ebook form also in many different forms besides an actual book that you can hold on to. But I think it shouldn't be hard for anybody to find. The book is available everywhere from the distributor. It's going to be easy to find.
Right.
And I hope that people will enjoy the read.
Also, go to your local library and request that the library buy it. And that
good idea, Barney.
Yeah.
Good idea. But again, on I'm on my website is what I said. I'm also on Instagram.
Okay.
Yep, you can find there. My Instagram is Oh Hey Pal. Like that's what my nephew always called me. Oh Hey Pal. That's my Instagram. So that's fairly easy to find. And then you can find, a page with all of the links where you can order. There are many links.
Well, congratulations, Polly, on your new book.
Thank you. And Barney, would you also let me just give a shout out to Rootstock? Because you know Rootstock well, but Rootstock, and also a shout out to including somebody from New Hampshire. We actually our family had a home for a number of years in the beautiful town of Peacham, Vermont.
Yeah.
And that was near one of my brothers lives for many years in Bennett, Vermont. And so we were there summer after summer after summer. And I have to say that place is magical. For anybody who knows it, and you're smiling because I just want you to know how much we love the Northeast Kingdom. And being here in New Hampshire, New Hampshire and Vermont always have an interesting relationship where, we're similar in so many ways. And then, there's some differences, but we really love Vermont.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Polly. It was a pleasure talking to you. And you got to come back on when you get your second book coming out.
Oh, thanks, Barney. I'll remember that you said that. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for inviting me today.
You're welcome.